NATO expansion, balancing security interests and Russian concerns. NATO's expansion over the past several decades has been a subject of significant debate and controversy, particularly in regards to its impact on relations with Russia. The alliance's enlargement, which has seen it incorporate several former Soviet states and Warsaw Pact countries, has been met with increasing concern and opposition from Moscow. This analysis will explore the rationale behind NATO's expansion, the concerns expressed by Russia, and the potential consequences of pushing Russia too far in terms of security and geopolitical stability. The rationale behind NATO expansion. The primary motivation behind NATO's expansion has been the desire to promote stability, security, and democratic values in Europe. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, many former Warsaw Pact countries and Soviet republics sought to strengthen their ties with the West and join institutions such as NATO and the European Union. By integrating these countries into the alliance, NATO aimed to provide them with security guarantees, facilitate their democratic transitions, and foster greater cooperation and integration within Europe. Additionally, NATO's expansion has sought to counter potential security threats and challenges in the post-Cold War era. The incorporation of new member states has extended the alliance's reach and capabilities, enhancing its ability to respond to emerging security concerns, including terrorism, cyberattacks, and an increasingly assertive Russia. By expanding its membership, NATO aims to maintain its relevance and effectiveness in a rapidly changing security environment. Russia's concerns about NATO expansion. Russia has consistently expressed concerns and opposition to NATO's expansion, viewing it as a threat to its national security and geopolitical interests. Moscow's primary concerns regarding NATO enlargement can be summarized as follows. 1. Encroachment on Russia's sphere of influence. Russia perceives NATO's expansion into former Soviet states and Warsaw Pact countries as an encroachment on its historical sphere of influence. Moscow argues that the incorporation of countries like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and most recently, Montenegro and North Macedonia, into NATO undermines its strategic interests and regional security. Military threat. Russia views NATO's expansion as a direct military threat, particularly given the alliance's commitment to collective defense under Article 5 of the NATO Treaty. The incorporation of new member states along Russia's borders has led to an increased NATO military presence in the region, which Moscow sees as a potential security risk. Broken promises. Russia contends that the West, particularly the United States, has violated assurances provided to Moscow during the early 1990s that NATO would not expand eastward. Although these assurances were never formalized in a binding agreement, Moscow feels betrayed by the subsequent enlargement of the alliance. The consequences of pushing Russia too far. The ongoing expansion of NATO and the subsequent deterioration of relations between the alliance and Russia have several potential consequences for regional security and geopolitical stability. 1. Increased military tensions. NATO's expansion has contributed to increased military tensions between the alliance and Russia, with both sides engaging in a series of military exercises, deployments, and arms buildups in the region. This heightened military activity raises the risk of incidents, accidents, or misunderstandings that could lead to unintended escalation and conflict. Arms race. The increased tensions between NATO and Russia have the potential to ignite a new arms race in Europe. As both sides seek to counter perceived threats and maintain a strategic advantage, the risk of destabilizing arms buildups and the development of new, more advanced weaponry increases. Geopolitical polarization. The ongoing tensions between NATO and Russia may further polarize European nations, forcing them to choose sides in a growing standoff. This polarization could weaken European unity and the European Union, as countries grapple with differing perspectives on how to address the evolving security environment and manage relations with Russia. Undermining diplomatic efforts and cooperation. The continued expansion of NATO and the resultant tensions with Russia may undermine diplomatic efforts and cooperation between the two sides on a range of issues, including arms control, counterterrorism, and non-proliferation. This lack of cooperation and dialogue may exacerbate existing security challenges and make it more difficult for both sides to find common ground and work together on shared interests. Increased assertiveness and aggression from Russia. The perception of NATO encroachment may lead Russia to adopt a more assertive and aggressive posture in response. This has already been seen in recent years with Russia's annexation of Crimea, its involvement in eastern Ukraine, and its increased military presence in the Arctic and the Baltic Sea region. Pushing Russia too far may prompt further actions that challenge NATO and destabilize the regional security environment. Finding a balance, addressing security interests and Russian concerns. In light of the potential consequences of pushing Russia too far, it is essential for NATO to strike a balance between addressing its security interests and accommodating Russian concerns. This could involve the following measures. 1. Engaging in dialogue and confidence-building measures. NATO should seek to engage in dialogue with Russia and pursue confidence-building measures aimed at reducing tensions and promoting transparency. This could include establishing communication channels to prevent misunderstandings and incidents, sharing information on military exercises and deployments, and potentially exploring the possibility of new arms control agreements. Reassessing the pace and scope of expansion. While NATO remains committed to the principle of open-door membership, it may be necessary to reassess the pace and scope of its expansion to avoid further exacerbating tensions with Russia. This could involve a more cautious approach to incorporating new member states, particularly those with close historical and cultural ties to Russia, or pursuing alternative security arrangements that do not involve formal NATO membership. Strengthening European security architecture. NATO should work with its European partners to strengthen the continent's broader security architecture, including the European Union's defense capabilities and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE. By fostering a more robust and diverse security environment, NATO can address its strategic interests while potentially alleviating some of Russia's concerns about the alliance's expansion. Encouraging diplomatic solutions to regional conflicts. NATO should continue to support diplomatic efforts aimed at resolving regional conflicts, such as the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, which have contributed to tensions with Russia. By promoting peaceful and negotiated solutions to these disputes, NATO can help to create a more stable and secure environment in Europe and potentially improve relations with Moscow. Conclusion. NATO's expansion has been a significant source of tension in its relationship with Russia, with potentially serious consequences for regional security and geopolitical stability. In order to navigate this complex landscape, NATO must find a balance between addressing its security interests and being sensitive to Russian concerns. This will require a combination of dialogue, confidence-building measures, a reassessment of the pace and scope of expansion, and efforts to strengthen the broader European security architecture. By adopting this multifaceted approach, NATO can work to preserve its strategic objectives while mitigating the risks associated with pushing Russia too far.